My name is Jennifer Marsman, and I am the principal engineer on the AI for Earth team at Microsoft. And what I want to talk to you about during this session is really two things. Number one, and this one I'm only going to spend like 2 slides on. So very, very quickly, I want to tell you what the AI for Earth program is. And mainly, I want to do that in the context of letting you know about a pot of free money that is available. And I know as other academics and startups and nonprofits, that may hopefully be useful and relevant to some of us practicing machine learning here. And then secondly, the majority of the time, what we're going to spend on is showing you 5 different ways that you can use machine learning and artificial intelligence for wildlife conservation, for fighting poaching, for reducing outbreaks of disease and world hunger. So we're going to talk about kind of all of those things very quickly, and then at the end, I'm going to point you to some papers and some other things you can do to learn even more. All right. So let me just start with what is the AI for Earth team and kind of what is this team at Microsoft? Where did it start? What are we doing here? We have come so far with machine learning. So I got my degree in artificial intelligence. I did my graduate work, I think it was 16 years ago now, 17 maybe, giving away my age a little there. But at that point, like what the state of the industry was then versus what it is now is incredible. Like we have made, in the last 16, 17 years, we have made tremendous gains in the areas of machine learning and what's possible through the advent of deep learning, cost of storage going down, compute power going up, all of those things. So we have this ripe, amazing time for machine learning. So things like automatic machine translation, speech to text, text to speech, all of this stuff has made so much progress. And so machine learning is really taking off. And there's a gentleman in Microsoft Research by the name of Lucas Joppa. And he came from not your typical Microsoft Research guy. He actually came from an environmental background. And what kind of keeps him up at night is these really huge, hairy conservation problems. How do we solve the problems that you see behind me around in agriculture, and how do we feed the world's growing population around clean water? So by the year 2030, demand for fresh water is projected to outpace the supply by like 40%. Biodiversity, so species are actually going extinct at like 1,000 times the rate that they're supposed to be through natural processes. So that's a huge problem because as machine learning people, that's that evolutionary data. When we lose that data, like it's gone, and all of the progress up to there is gone, and that has unintended consequences on other natural systems, things like pollination and other parts of our ecosystem. It's all interconnected. And then finally, climate, all kinds of things with rising sea levels and other concerns to worry about. And so the idea is really AI for Earth fits at that juxtaposition. How can we take all of this progress we've made with machine learning and be able to apply it to these big, hairy problems that we're facing with the environment? And so that's where the AI for Earth program was born. Lucas wrote this white paper, and it got in front of some executives at Microsoft, and it was funded to the tune of $50 million over 5 years. So Microsoft has made publicly committed to delivering $50 million over 5 years towards anyone doing work in this space. So that's point one. If you are doing any kind of work in the areas of agriculture, water, climate change, and biodiversity, using machine learning or data science to do that, feel free to apply to a grant. They are open to everyone, academics, startups, nonprofits, large corporations, it doesn't matter. So feel free to leverage that if you are my fellow machine learning practitioners doing work in that space. All right, now for the rest of this talk, what I want to focus on is some of the really cool work that's already being done. Because there are some, we hear so many scary things, and there are so many bad movies made about AI and making it so scary. So here are 5 examples you can use of just really cool, innovative uses of machine learning for good. And that's very exciting. And I'm going to start with something called Project Premonition. So Project Premonition, this is some stuff that's being done out of Microsoft Research. The principal researcher on this is a guy by the name of Ethan Jackson. And the idea behind Project Premonition, don't let the polar bears fool you. I actually just wanted to use a consistent title slide. So if you're sitting there thinking, what do polar bears have to do with this after I explain it? Absolutely nothing. I'm sorry. But all of them will have polar bears. So what Project Premonition is the idea of trying to predict an outbreak of a disease before it happens, okay? So when you think about what happens right now when a disease outbreak happens, here's kind of the natural flow of things. People get sick first, and then they all have to, schedule a time with their doctor, and if it's anything like my doctor, then, schedule out a little bit. And then they go to their doctor makes a diagnosis, and then the doctor has to report the diagnoses to some central organization, like the Center for Disease Control or World Health Organization, these kind of things that aggregate that data, and then realize, okay, we're seeing a lot of instances of this disease in this area, so we may have an outbreak. And then during all that time, as we got from the first person getting sick to having all that data aggregated, it's spreading, right? So the idea behind Project Premonition is, can we use some natural little data collectors to be able to get out in front of that? And those natural little data collectors are mosquitoes, right? So think about that. Mosquitoes are going around and they're taking blood samples from other animals, from humans, from all this stuff, and they're gathering data about the population. And so if we can catch mosquitoes and then use that blood, those blood meals that they've extracted, using our genomics pipeline, we can actually reverse engineer what we find in that blood to be able to tell what host animal it came from, like who the mosquito bit to get that data, and then what diseases they carried as well. So that's the process. Mosquitoes bite the animals. We take that, we catch the mosquitoes, and then we use the blood from those mosquitoes to be able to figure out the diseases in that population. And this is really interesting stat there. 75% of emerging infectious diseases originate from animals. So as they go in a population and they do bite humans as well as animals, we can learn a lot of data for that. So I'm going to focus on two things here. So first of all, ignore the text for a second and just look at that picture for me. Let me explain how this works. So that's one of our smart traps, the Project Premonition smart traps. It's a cylinder. It's about maybe this big, this tall, and this far around is to give you a sense of how big it is physically. And then there's all these little windows right here. So these are actually 64 individual little cells that you have. And it's hard to see them because they're all open right now, but there's a little trap door right here, a little kind of plasticky trap door that can flip up. On each individual cell, there's an independent one. And in the center, if you kind of look down the center, if you look at it from the top view, in the center there's a circle, and then we can put a long tube down the middle of some kind of a lure. And there's a variety of different lures we've experimented with. We've used CO2, carbon dioxide, which humans exhale and which attracts insects. We've used various scents, and we've also used light. So these things all tend to attract insects, and we've played with a lot of these. And then we actually have a tiny little classifier embedded in each one of those individual little cells. So insects can fly, they kind of fly to the center, they check out the lure, and then most of them can fly away. But we do have a little binary classifier, mosquito, not a mosquito, that we actually are running on that device. And so when a mosquito does enter, then boop, that little trap door pops up and just traps the mosquito inside. It doesn't kill him or hurt it, actually, it just traps it in there. And then we take that collection, we can go, leave it for a day or something, and then come back and collect it. And then we take that whole a little trap to a lab where we can extract the mosquitoes, get access to those blood samples, and then do the rest of the work. So that is the Project Premonition Smart Trap and how it works. Really, really cool stuff. And interesting thing about the feature there, the primary feature that's used by the classifier that's the most interesting is actually the wing beat speed is very telling of whether it's a mosquito or not a mosquito. Okay, so then if we look at the text for a second. So this is really cool for predicting disease outbreak, and we're using it in that fashion right now. But you could also see from an AI for Earth perspective, perhaps in the future, doing things like using it for disease monitoring and understanding the overall health or the overall population of an ecosystem, right? We could see maybe as insects fly in and out, just the insect distribution of what's in that area without even having to capture them. We could just use computer vision and see what's flying in and out there. We could also use it from the blood to be able to say, okay, we're biting a lot of cows in this area. And maybe monitor the population of various animals and such in that area as well. So there's a lot of interesting other applications that we could potentially do here as well. And that's it all lit up. Ooh, look at those PowerPoint skills. All right, so I think I've told you most of this stuff. The main thing, it's about 90% accuracy. I didn't mention that yet. It's about 90% accuracy in terms of what we can do in terms of trapping those mosquitoes. And then 87 experiments, over 22,000 mosquito landings. They're all trapped. And it is kind of interesting. We worked really hard to make sure that those samples, when those insects are trapped, they are kept in good condition so that, the blood can be extracted and that sort of thing. So there's no fan in the design, like it doesn't suck in there where it's going to crumple up their body or do anything like that. They're just trapped very safely so we can be able to work with the insects and get those specimens in good shape. Okay, so then those are taken back to a lab, and from at that point we do euthanize the mosquitoes at that point, and then extract the blood, and then perform gene sequencing on that blood. And so this is something that really exploded from the power of cloud. We do have a genomics pipeline which we're utilizing. But then we're using something called SNAP, and this was developed a collaboration between Microsoft and Johns Hopkins University and others as well. And essentially what that enabled us to do is to kind of take that blood in that genomics pipeline and all of the different known organisms out there and run it on this huge compute cluster. So we're using 200 Azure Compute nodes to do this. And the thing that's really exciting about this is that this is one of the scenarios where cloud really shone, because prior to this work, it took about 30 days to do this analysis. And then after we kind of moved this workload to the cloud and we could scale out, it went down to 12 hours. So very, very cool to be able to turn around this a lot faster and learn about the environment. So really great work there. So that is Project Premonition. All kinds of machine learning used here. There's machine learning embedded on those traps, the classifiers. There's a ton of machine learning being used inside of the genomics pipeline. And then you can also use ML to decide the best places to place the traps as well. All right. The next story I want to tell you about is something called FarmBeats. So FarmBeats is the idea behind this one was to try to reduce world hunger. So in a meeting of the UN in 2009, it was actually realized that we would have to double our current rate of food production by the year 2050, or we're just not going to be able to feed the world's growing population. And so there's a lot of things that we could do to do this. And the folks, Microsoft Research, this is another Microsoft Research project. The principal researcher on this one is a gentleman by the name of Ranveer Chandra. And the idea that we hit upon to fix this was the idea of precision agriculture. So the idea behind precision agriculture is, let's take as an example precision irrigation, so watering fields. Instead of homogeneously watering a field, so every amount of the field is getting the same amount of water, that's not actually necessary. If there's little dips or divots in the field, water runs down, and it's watered a little better there. So what we can do is only give the amount of water that's actually necessary in the field. And that's a great example, and I use precision irrigation a lot because it's very easy for folks to visualize. But one of the other ones I really, really love is the idea of precision pesticides, right? Because that is something that is just such a win-win-win for everyone. Pesticides are actually really expensive for farmers. So it is actually beneficial to the farmer to get to use less pesticides. It costs less. If we can only spray pesticides where there are actual pests, then it costs less for the farmer. It's better for the environment, and it's better for all of us who are eating the food. So really a ton of benefits there. So precision pesticides, precision irrigation, all of these things roll under the umbrella of precision agriculture. So only kind of using what's needed when it's needed. Okay, so those of us who are developers here, anyone who's done any IoT work might think, okay, that's fairly straightforward, right? We just go to Adafruit.com or something. You can buy, it's like $10 for like a moisture sensor. So we should be up and running pretty quickly. However, when I first talked to Ranveer, he's like, no, the actual problem here is it's costing us roughly $1,000 a sensor. And I was slightly taken aback by this, and I was like, no, wait, look at this website. Really, they're only about $10. We can fix this. And of course, he's well aware of this fact. And the actual issue here is not the cost of the device. That is in like the tens of dollars. So the next thought is maybe it's the power, right? We don't have convenient power cords in the middle of a farm in a field and such. But it's not the power either. We actually use solar panels here, and this is one of our farms in Carnation, Washington. And at this particular farm here, you can see how it works. Here's a solar panel, and those solar panels run roughly $50 to $100 US, so still a little bit more than the sensor itself, but still not in the magnitude of $1,000. So I'll come back to that for a second, but while I'm on this slide, let me just kind of show you our makeup here. The sensors that we want to use are, you can mount them all on a board, and then we have that board mounted inside of a, or hidden inside of a waterproof casing. And so this waterproof casing is then mounted on this little pole, which has a solar panel on top, and then that solar panel charges the board in here, which uses relatively little charge. Even us in Seattle, which is notorious for not being sunny a lot, we were able to keep it charged for, I think, every day of the month except for one or something we ran out when we were doing one of the trials. So we're able to use that to charge. And then there's some little leads in here that can snake out various sensors to measure moisture, pH levels, temperature, wind speed, whatever you want to measure. You can snake out and put those leads in the ground or wherever you'd like. And then we also mount a camera in there, and that's to give the farmer a view of their farm. So without having to walk to every location, if you have a very large farm, you can actually just use the camera and then have a dashboard and be able to see various views of your farm from different places. And this camera does actually have support for our RGB, natural color, as well as infrared. So you can get a nice thing. OK, so popping that off the stack, let's jump back to the cost of the sensor, this $1,000 per sensor. So right now, we're up to roughly like $160 max, right, with the sensor and the actual sensor and the solar panel. Turns out, the actual cost, and what's really costing that $1,000 per sensor, is connectivity. It's getting that data off of that little board and into the cloud where we can do something useful with it. And when you think about that, if you guys have ever driven through a rural area on your cell phone and the call has dropped, you know that a lot of times there isn't quite as good of a cellular network just because the population density is smaller in rural areas, and so there's less incentives for the cell phone providers to have great connectivity there. And then there's also Wi-Fi is an option, but Wi-Fi does not stretch very far using conventional means, right? I know I go across the street to pick up my kid from the bus stop, and it's like literally right across the street from my house, and I'm already out of range on my phone when I cross the street. So it just doesn't stretch very far. So those are some of the problems, is the connectivity challenge. And so we actually solved it two ways. One was reducing the number of sensors that we actually use. So what we can do is use fewer sensors and then use machine learning to actually couple that with aerial imagery and be able to calculate values where we don't have data. So we started with drones. So we have drones that flew over the farms, and we actually created a little app for farmers to use. Like, we didn't want to have farmers have to be able to be expert pilots of drones, because it does take some work. And so what we can do here is we actually created two modes. There's either a point selection mode or an area selection mode. The point selection mode, they just select some points and then the altitude and then hit start, and then the drone will just fly that path. Or there's an area selection mode where you specify, OK, I want you to do this area, and then we're actually optimizing for battery life by always going the long way so that the drone has to change directions fewer times, which is what drains the battery, is changing momentum and stuff. So both of those are possible, and then we get all this aerial imagery. And then another thing that we've added a little bit more recently, the majority of this work has been done with drones in all of our pilots, but there's a couple areas where we're doing this in other countries where the regulations on drones are very, very tight. And so another thing that we've done, which is very low tech yet highly effective, is use these large helium balloons, these tethered helium balloons. And so if you do that same kind of image-based thing, and that's Ranvier. If you do that same image-based thing and then put it on a big helium balloon and then tether that to the ground, you can send it up, and then how high you do affects like how big of the cone that it can see the vision. And then you can put those together and be able to do some pretty cool machine learning. And so you take your aerial imagery, whether you get it by drone or by balloon, and then you can couple that with the data from the sensors that you do have and use machine learning. Specifically, we're using Gaussian processes to do these, to be able to extrapolate on the rest of the field how much moisture and such you already have. And really, the model that we built is balancing two things, spatial and visual smoothness. One is spatial, and basically that just means if, right here, this soil right here and this soil, which is very close to it, they're probably going to have similar pH levels, for example, just because they're close in space. And then the second thing is visually similar. So meaning if I have a dark patch over here because something has just been watered and another dark patch over here, then they may have similar moisture levels due to that. So conceptually, that's how this is working. All right, so when we put that all together, we can do a lot of different services to create this entire data-driven farm. We can all kinds of agriculture things. We can estimate yields. We can do this precision irrigation and precision pesticides, precision fertilization, precision pH levels, all kinds of really great stuff. And then as well as those cameras, just giving an entire data-driven view of the farm. So that's the goal of FarmBeats. Here's a quick look at our projects. And we have stood this up in many locations now. There's some kind of tells you what exactly we've done. We've used drones in most locations, as you can see, but we're doing these, standing these up all over the world, and they've been very, very successful so far. So that's the overall architecture and the story of FarmBeats, and there's more information I'll point to you at the end. All right, the next thing is something called Systematic Poacher Detector, and it is acronymed SPOT. And the idea behind SPOT is to be able to spot poachers. So if any of you went to Mark Hamilton's talk this morning, he did a deep dive on this work. So all of you guys have access to the recordings since you were here as participants at O'Reilly. So go back and watch. If you want to learn more about this, go back and watch Mark's talk that he did this morning, because he did a great job going really deep into the details of the faster RCNN and all kinds of good stuff on deployment and that kind of thing. So a lot of good detail there. But to give you the highlights, poaching is a real big problem, and specifically we've been working with a lot of conservancies in Africa, and so a lot of times when we're talking about big animals like elephants or rhinoceros, these things are cover a very wide area, right? And so they're both heavily tracked for their ivory, for the tusks, and for the rhinoceros horn, and so to protect them, we need ways. There's actually park rangers and such that monitor it, but when you're talking about such a big space, knowing where those animals are and how to best protect them can be a really challenging thing. And a lot of the poaching actually happens at night. So state of the art, what we're doing right now is using these long-wave thermal infrared cameras. And so they're mounted on drones, on, again, unmanned aerial vehicles. And so those can fly over the area and then be able to detect where animals are and where human beings are. And then we can see, OK, those are poachers or park rangers based on the known routes of the park rangers. And the problem is right now, all of this data, the drones are flying, and currently there are humans that are sitting there monitoring this in real time. And it has to be real time because if there's a poacher out on your land, you need to intervene fast, or else it's no use to detect them after they've made a kill. So what you have to do is, real time is really important here. But there's a problem, because this is, as I said, this is actually infrared cameras. And I'll show you an image of this for a second, but infrared cameras are rough. This is black and white, low resolution, not fun to look at data. And so there's humans looking at it overnight. And human detection, as we know, this has been proven in many papers, human detection degrades with fatigue. People get tired and can't do this as well. And then secondly, we have a scale problem, because the more drones we have, the more things we have, you have to scale out humans as well to monitor this. So this seems like a great case for computer vision. And so enter Spot. And the idea behind Spot is to be able to automate this by augmenting those drones with the ability to detect poachers and animals in real time. So this is hard. This is hard for a lot of different reasons. The main point I want you to get out of this slide is that this is a more challenging problem than you would think. So the original image for one of these is the left-hand image that's kind of the A row there. And so that's the original image that someone may be looking at. And you can see there's a bunch of black dots, there's gray dots, there's white dots, and you have to find the poacher and all of that. Like, that's tricky. And then on the right-hand side, it actually shows that's where the actual poacher is, using those little transparent boxes to kind of give you a clue. This is the ground truth of where the poachers actually are. But you can see this is a tricky thing to figure out. And here's a couple of reasons why this is hard. And then we are actually applying kind of state-of-the-art computer vision, but you can kind of see where some of it falls short. So thresholding, you can see on row B, so that allows you to kind of pop the white a little bit more to make those stand out and be able to identify those things a little bit more easily. So since it's using infrared and human beings and animals emit heat, like they do pop a little bit more. So we can use thresholding to amplify that. And then stabilization of the frame difference. So this is also one of the things that makes this problem hard. The drone, remember this data is taken from a drone flying overhead. So the drone is moving. And then one of the things that would make it easier to detect animals and people on the ground is that they may likely be moving too. So you can basically use some motion detection. But when you have two things moving at the same time, that stabilization problem just gets a little bit harder. So that's one thing that's hard. Secondly, the thermal, just the nature of this thermal sensor is just very low resolution, and it's single band imagery. So it's very different from typical RGB natural color images. So it's a little harder to work with. And then the other thing that's tricky about this is that due to the height that the drone is flying, that can make it really hard as well, because you can have, these animals or poachers may be like 20 pixels big. So the higher you are, the smaller it's going to appear on the screen. So just trying to do that with really small things is pretty tricky. So, and then we have to make it real time, we have to handle that, and a lot of times we have to do this in very low bandwidth situations, so low connectivity as we're kind of beaming this radio. So again, all in all, very, very kind of hard problem. So here's a look at the architecture and how we can potentially solve this. So we are doing offline training. So starting kind of with the diagram on the left, it's an offline training process, and we are using FASTER, our CNN. So that is using a regional proposal network to basically kind of isolate objects of interest in there, and then it can use a standard FASTER thing to be able to, convolutional neural net, to be able to zoom in and adjust that and grab the actual poacher or animal in the screen. So kind of state-of-the-art object detection that's being used. And that's initialized with pre-trained weights from ImageNet. And then we actually used video. So we framed up, grabbed the frames out of videos, and then we annotated labels for these frames. And this was actually done by a small team of students. The other thing that's a little bit tricky about this problem is that it's sensitive data. There's been so much literature of researchers who are, have found an undiscovered animal that they thought was extinct, or basically accidentally kind of gave away kind of data with the interest of helping people, and then poachers used that data to zero in and find the rhinoceros and then got it. So we didn't want to farm this out to Mechanical Turk or something like that. So it was a small team of students that actually sat there and labeled all of this data. And they created both a poacher model that was fine-tuned using about 4,000 frames, and then there was an animal model as well that was fine-tuned using about 18,000 frames, because we had more animal imagery than poachers. And so then online, so here's kind of our online inference. This is offline training and then online inference. We're grabbing that video stream. We're doing a little bit of pre-processing. Basically, that's white hot versus black hot, making sure that the warm things pop up white, or making sure that coloring is consistent. And then we have two different, after pre-processing, you can kind of see what your internet connection is doing. If it's a bad internet connection, we can run locally on a machine, and we do have a GPU laptop that can be used in the field. And then if there's a good internet connection, then we'll send it up to Azure. And we actually have two different Azure architectures here, which I've kind of dived into those in a little bit more detail in the diagram to the right. The first one is Azure Basic on the bottom. And so that one is essentially grabbing that data, sending it up to the cloud, and it's using a single virtual machine with GPU support that is running on an NC6 machine. And it's using something called Paramiko, which is a Python SFTP client, to do the file transfer. And so then it just uses the model that we created up there, and it actually still can display the annotated frame locally using X forwarding. And then the other option is Azure Advanced. So this one is a little bit more, it's basically scaling out the Azure Basic idea. So it's taking those GPU-enabled machines and then scaling them out using a Kubernetes cluster on Azure. And so this is using TensorFlow serving. And TensorFlow serving actually gives us a whole lot of advantages as well because it's using protocol buffers, and so that actually cuts down on the network traffic back and forth. And when you're doing image processing, which is big files, a lot of stuff moving across, that can be really useful. So in general, Azure Advanced is the better. It's definitely faster, and it can scale better because in both cases, we're sending batches of frames at once for processing. So you can scale out and be faster with the Azure Advanced. OK, so this is a video. This is actually a training video. So this was done using tests run by our partner, AirShepherd. So AirShepherd, actually, this is a test that was done in South Africa. And basically, they were creating training data and testing this. So they hired these are not actual real poachers. They hired some people. And they're running just a simulation. And this is a 30-minute simulation that's actually sped up by 20x. But you can see the performance here. And this is an in-field performance test of this one is running Azure Basic, so it's a little slower. And then there were some network challenges during the test, too. So you can see it sometimes drops the little purple things. But essentially, it's highlighting the people that it sees there using those little purple boxes that you can see. And so we're in the woods right now. It kind of cuts out for a second here, and then it comes back when we go back over here. But essentially, you can watch this whole video. There's an online version of this at bit.ly/spotvideo if you want to go watch the whole thing. All right, the next thing, AV people, we have a little issue out here. Half the screen just disappeared. The next one is iNaturalist. So iNaturalist is something that is basically the idea behind iNaturalist is being able to take biodiversity data, like data about flora and fauna and observations that have happened, and be able to make it available to a lot of people. And we're crowdsourcing to do that. The crowdsourcing part is the thing that's really exciting to me. So anyone who's a citizen scientist who cares about the Earth can move forward and take observations. So I'll show you that in just a second. And then all of that data is used. All of that data is used for online monitoring. So essentially, there's this great community of people who care about the environment, but they don't know a lot about biology. So I am an example of that. I would like to help, but I don't necessarily know the difference. If I see a plant or animal life, I might not be able to recognize it to the species level. But we can still crowdsource this using computer vision to help people label data and then have that be sent up to the cloud and utilized. So there's a lot of great information. They have this great community that's already available. A lot of users using this already, a lot of observations and species that have been collected just through volunteers. And you guys can do this too if you like. It's actually really fun if you're doing a nature walk with your kids or whatever. You can install, the app is called iNaturalist, and it's available on iOS and Android. And you make it, you just go and take a picture, and I'll walk you through a screenshot in just a second. But then all of that data is made available to these biologists and conservationists and stuff who can get a good sense of flora and fauna. So here's how it actually works. It records three things: the actual image of, it can be either plants or animals. And then it grabs the date, time, and the actual location, so latitude and longitude, so that the conservationists have all of this data available. Now, the hard part is labeling the image, right? So a novice user like me, when I'm using iNaturalist, I take a picture and stuff, but the problem they were running into is that I don't necessarily know the exact kind of plant this is. It kind of looks like a geranium, but I don't know. So I can kind of label that, and I think I have, but they need some kind of verification. So they were kind of routing them all to an expert user, and then that was creating a bottleneck in the system to be able to do this because these observations would pile up. So we looked at how we could use computer vision to actually augment that. Instead of just kind of blindly trying to select, here's what I think this is, the computer vision can basically take a look at it and use computer vision to say, OK, we think based on all the data we've been trained with that it is, here are the top 10 guesses that we have, and then with probabilities assigned. And so then it just becomes a matching game that even a 12-year-old could do. Say, OK, look at this plant, look at these. Oh, it's that one. So that makes it a lot easier when you have this visual comparison. And then we can still augment that with training as needed, or with human verification as needed. So we did this using Azure Machine Learning and MML Spark. And so used these pre-trained base models and sent in these training images and created a model using CNNs, using the Microsoft Cognitive Toolkit, the CNTK, for training, or for the deep learning toolkit. And we got about 90% accuracy. And this is being used with several projects that we're doing today. And then what we have now is an easier distribution where we can use that computer vision. We got one bar out, guys. Computer vision, we can use computer vision, like right here, this is the important part. We can use computer vision then to augment that. So essentially, you're not stuck with the problem of the expert user being the bottleneck. The computer vision can kind of take a lot of that workload off. OK, so let me give you a quick example. I was speaking at ICML a couple months ago, and this was in Stockholm. And so I'm in Stockholm, and I'm taking a walk by the water, and I saw that bird. And I don't know what bird that is. I thought it was probably a crane or a heron, but I don't know. So I took a picture with my phone, and I apologize, I was kind of far away, so I zoomed in a little, so that's why the picture looks a little bit grainy, because I was on like max zoom. But I took a picture of this bird, and then I put it through iNaturalist. So let me show you the experience. Here's the details. Basically, you check that little camera thing, you show you input your images, and you can take multiple images, different angles, stuff like that, to make it even better. And but I just put in one for there. And then if you actually take the picture right from inside the iNaturalist app, it will actually automatically fill in the date, time, and the location for you, because you have all that information being on a cell phone. If you actually take the picture outside of the app, and then you basically point it to a file on your machine, it won't necessarily fill in all of that data if it's not available. So in my case, I have GPS turned off on my camera to add GPS, because I'm paranoid, because I put pictures online sometimes, and I don't want people to find my location. So what I can do is easily, though, click on that, and then it takes you to a little screen like that, and I can say, just get my current location, and then bam, it fills it in, and you can see I was at, this was in Stockholm, so that's the address in Stockholm, and then, or roughly my location in Stockholm. And then here's the interesting part, is this view suggestions right here. So I click on this view suggestions, and it performs a species search. And it's using both the computer vision, and then the algorithm that they're currently using today uses the location as an input as well. So in this case, you could see it says, we're pretty sure it's in this genus, so great heron. So it did know right away that it was a heron. So I was wrong about the crane. It was a heron. And then it gave you the top 10 species suggestions. And I could tell pretty easily it did not look like this, it did not look like this, but the top two, it actually looked pretty close to both of those. And so I ended up, and it actually used the data. You can go and look at more images and such, and then be able to confirm, OK, I think it was this actual image. And it turns out the gray heron was more prevalent in Europe, and the other one was more prevalent in North America, so that made it very easy to do that. So then I select that, and then boom, it's gone. All right, and then the very last one I want to tell you about is another last organization called WildMe. WildMe is also doing conservation and animal tracking, but they have a very, very cool algorithm that can actually recognize animals at the individual animal level. So we're not talking hot dog, not a hot dog. We are talking, or let's say cougar, not a cougar. We're talking, this is cougar 57309. This is, Callie the cougar or whatever. So individual animals. And they can do this with any large animal that has distinctive markings. And so that's everything from like big cats with their spots, elephants with distinctive ear shapes, turtles, zebras with stripes, and giraffes, things like that, whale sharks that have distinctive flukes. So all of this data can be used to identify animals at the individual level. And so that by itself is really, really cool, right? Like, just that is really, really fun, interesting machine learning, being able to have this database of known animals and then compare and then see another animal in the future and then be able to say, OK, I definitively know like what animal that is. That by itself is fabulous. But here's where the story goes from good to great. This is what really gets me excited. Is they're actually leveraging social media as well to get more data. Okay, so let's say I go on a whale watching trip and I post a little picture or a little video to YouTube, for example. That every night they have an intelligent agent that wakes up at 10 p.m. and it goes out and uses natural language processing and searches for example, whale sharks. They do have individual wild books, I should say. Their platform is called Wildbook, and they have individual wild books for a wild book for like this giraffe population, this whale shark population, et cetera. So let's look at the whaleshark.org is their whale shark wild book. And so let's say it wakes up, it looks for people posting whale watching pictures for whale sharks. And then when it finds them, so it actually does then frame-by-frame extraction when they see the text of people talking about whale sharks. Frame-by-frame extraction, so we're getting that data. It does object detection to actually find the animal within images, and then it compares that animal to the database of known things. And if it finds a match, it actually posts a little picture or a little message to the YouTube video and says, hey, you found, here, let me write the same thing because you guys can't read that, I know. It actually says, it gives you the exact time, so which frame it's using. So at 2 minutes, 46 seconds into the video, you can see whale shark MXA 700. We've been tracking it since 2006. This is the first sighting of 2017. Here's everything we know about it. And then it gives you a link to that whale book, or whale shark page. And so if the user clicks on it, it gives you this data. And I think they were thinking like Facebook for animals with this wild book concept, because it gives you a whole bunch of things. So first of all, there's this cool like nickname me. So if this was like a whale shark that I saw on a trip, I could actually go and like give it a little name and then, oh, cool, it's like my whale. Like kind of give that personal experience to get people excited about it. And then these are things that's really cool. It can track all the places that it's seen that. So we're talking individual migration paths of individual whales being tracked using social media. Like, isn't that so much better than like Instagramming your food? Like, I'm just so excited about like what a cool use for social media. So individual migration paths, and then it's also doing the social graph. So it's seen this animal in the same place with another animal or traveling with some other animals. So you show those circles right there actually linking the social graph of here's this whale shark and how it's been seen with this other whale shark. So really, really cool stuff using the power of social media. So those are our 5 stories. Those were some of the very cool things. Project Premonition, FarmBeat, Spot, iNaturalist, and WildMe. Great examples of how people can use machine learning to give back to the community. I did post a whole bunch of related work. So if you want to read more about the fun details of these machine learning algorithms, I posted papers and resources and websites that you can go and check out to learn more information about all of these things. And then I do want to refresh you and remind you all, if you or you know someone who is doing data science and machine learning work in the areas of agriculture, water, climate change, and biodiversity, please apply for a grant, because I think that together we can all make an impact. Thank you. I think I'm at time, but I'm happy to go hang out at the Microsoft booth for a while or take any questions if the next speaker isn't here.
Could you show URL page again?
Oh, yes, I will go back. Yep, here are the resources. Yeah.
That was super awesome.
Yay!
Very cool.
I think so too. Oh, and we're actually hiring interns right now. PhD students. If you're a PhD student, we just put out a call for, like literally, I saw it in my inbox like an hour or 2 ago. So if anyone is interested in that, like ping me online. I'm on Twitter, I'm on everything. So find me online and I can send you the details of it. So if there's any like PhD students or something who would like a internship doing work, like AI for Earth type work for a while, let me know. Thank you guys.